Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Let's talk about first read guides. If you're looking at this, it's because you've been assigned one from me and you're trying to figure out how to do it. And I want to point out, first things first, nothing really to worry about. It's not very difficult assignment. Let's take a look at it. I'm going to put it up on your screen and let's go over it. The first thing I want to point out to you regarding first read guides is the fact that everything that you have to do is described in the top of each box. So take a look at notice. It says notice who the story is about, what happens, where and when it happens, and why those involved react as they do. So what they're asking you to do in this first box, the top left box, the notice box, is to give a sentence or two about who. So I actually put it in right there. Who is the story about? Who are the main characters? So you're going to say the characters in the story are, and just describe those characters. What is the story about? This is a story about a haunted house, or this is a story about a family that goes on a trip. I don't know, I'm making this up. Just tell me what the story is about. 1 or 2 sentences. Where? 1 or 2 sentences. Where does this story take place? What is the setting? When? 1 or 2 sentences. This story takes place in the present time. This story takes place in medieval times, whatever it is. Why? Why am I reading this story? Or what is it? Why are the characters doing what they're doing? So, for example, the first story that we read is called The Pit and the Pendulum. Why? We are reading this story because it gives examples of characters doing things differently when they are afraid, or it gives examples of characters who are really afraid and how that fear affects them. So that's why. So again, for the notice, the top left, you're just giving 1 sentence describing who, what, where, when, and why. 1 or 2 sentences each, done. Let's look at the top right, annotate. Okay, now this is important. This is probably the most important thing you're going to do. You are going to pick 3 different quotes, and you are going to annotate them. So the quotes that you're going to pick are going to be quotes that are dealing with fear. So I would type in my quote right here. Please type the direct quote here in quotation marks. Now, I want to point out, how do we do this correctly? At the end of our quote, we put our quotation marks. Then in parentheses, we put the page number down that we took this quote. I'm going to make a page number up. I'm going to say 16, and then I put my period after that. Annotation, as you know, is just a note about the quote. So you say something like this. This quote clearly shows, so we're going to start each one of our annotations, clearly shows, sorry, my typing is not so great today. This quote clearly shows how fear affects the character in negative ways. Period. Done. Let's fix that right there. How fear affects the character in many ways. And I have to do that 3 times. So I go to my second one and I pick another quote that shows. Here I put quote number 2. And then I put my page number again. We'll say it's 18 this time. And then I put my period afterwards. And again, for the annotation, I have to explain why I put this. So I would say this quote clearly shows another example of fear causing the character to act differently, to act in a different way. Or crazy way. Perfect. Boom. So, as you know, for annotation, I have to do 3 times. I put my quote in quotation marks. I put the page number after the quotation marks to show me where I took this quote from the story, right? And then I annotated. This quote clearly shows blank, how fear makes him act stupid, how fear causes him to act a different way. And I do this for 3 different things. So those are my annotations. Good. Number 3, third box, connect. Connect ideas within the selection to what you already know and what you have already read. I just need a paragraph minimum. connecting this story to anything in your life. So for the first one, The Pit and the Pendulum, it shows how terrified he is when he thinks he's going to be afraid. Have you ever seen a movie or read another story where somebody is being tortured like that? The first thing that comes to my mind is that movie Saw, where that crazy guy sticks people into a room and then he tortures them. And it shows you how this torturing affects these people. I'm going to write a paragraph about that. This short story, The Pit and the Pendulum, reminds me of the movie Saw in the following ways. And then I describe a couple of things that shows me that. And I'm done. Just a paragraph connection. Now, one thing I want to point out, you can make this up if you have to. You could say something as simple as, this story reminds me of a dream I once had, where blank, and then you just make up a dream that sounds similar to this movie. But books, movies, short stories, even video games, you can make connections to. It's any connection you have in your life to the story that we just read. You cannot get that wrong, but you must fill out something. And then lastly, bottom right box, respond by completing the comprehension check and by writing a brief summary of the selection. Some of the stories that we do inside the book, the My Perspectives book, that's going to have questions at the end, 4, 5, 6 comprehension questions. What happened here? What happened there? You're going to answer those questions here. You'll number it, number 1, and then you answer the question. And then you put number 2, and then you answer the question, number 3. So if it has comprehension questions, you're going to answer those questions. After that, you're going to give a 1-paragraph summary. This story is all about a man who gets put into a dungeon, and he is tortured throughout the story. First, they try to have him fall into a hole. Then they try to cut him open with a blade that comes from the ceiling. Then he is saved at the end by the French came and they saved him. So I want a 1-paragraph summary of this. Simple, excellent. So again, let's look at our 4 boxes, what you must do. Who, what, where, when, why. Give me 1 or 2 sentences explaining who is the story about, what's going on in the story, where it takes place, when it takes place, and why we are reading it. Top right, 3 annotations. Give me 3 quotes dealing with fear or showing that the character is afraid, and then explain those quotes. This quote clearly shows blank. Good. Bottom left, give me a 1-paragraph connection connecting what you read to anything in your life that reminds you of this, whether it's a movie, a television show, a book you have read, or even a video game you have played, anything. Maybe a dream you've had or a story your friends told you, anything you can connect. Give me 1 paragraph connecting it to the story. And it would start by, this story reminds me of, and then you go from there and describe it. And then of course, the bottom right box, your respond box, that's very simple. You're either going to do 2 things or 1 thing. 1, you're going to answer comprehension questions at the end of the story if you read that story inside the My Perspectives book, or you just do a paragraph minimum summary of the story. So either you're going to be answering questions and a summary, or if there are no questions, you'll just be giving a summary of the story in 1 paragraph. Again, as always, if you have any questions with this, please ask me and I'll be happy to go over with it at any time.